The budget battle rages in Washington, D.C., with the government shutdown seemingly increasingly likely. On Tuesday, Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan added to the mix a GOP plan that would privatize Medicare while cutting taxes on corporations and the wealthy. Also on Tuesday, over 200 colleges took part in a nationally streamed teach-in convened by Professors Frances Piven and Cornel West on the topic of the economy. One of the participants in New York was Heather McGhee, Washington Bureau Director of Demos. I had a chance to talk with her about the Ryan budget plan right after the teach-in.
Paul Ryan's roadmap, which I call the roadmap to ruin, is really an astonishing document that really doubles down on pretty much every single one of the negative economic decisions of the past 30 years that has gotten us into the mess we're in today. It basically takes all of the remaining structures that help the middle class be vibrant and just decimates them, whether it's Social Security, which actually he does put the crosshairs on, even though he tries to say in his op-eds and stuff that he doesn't. He ends Medicare as we know it. He ends Medicaid as we know it. He guts college age at a time when it's so important for young students to go to college, to get that ticket into middle class life. He puts a cap on the amount that the government can invest in its own people at a really drastic rate that if it had been in place over the past 50 years, we wouldn't recognize our country today, all while still cutting taxes further for the wealthiest Americans. It's really astonishing and should be used as an organizing tool for Americans to take their country back.
Drill down a little bit on the Social Security part of it, because it has been unclear to some people just what is being proposed here.
So basically, instead, there's a small Social Security shortfall. I think it's very important to note that Social Security does not contribute a dime to the deficit. But over the next 35 years, we will start taking in more than we pay out, and there will be a shortfall if we don't make some changes. We can make some changes that are very progressive, that in fact say that we can raise the cap from $106,000, which is what it is now, which is basically, at that point, people stop paying Social Security income tax. Most people don't know that. Most people think they pay Social Security tax on every dime that they make. But the Ryan plan basically says that the Obama administration now has a certain amount of time before it has to submit a proposal for Social Security, which we all know, given the political factors in Washington right now, means sort of a crosshairs on Social Security.
Talk about alternatives for a moment, because a lot of Americans resonate to Ryan's comment in the presentation of this plan that for them life has gotten worse. And it seems as if it keeps getting worse, and something has to be done.
Absolutely. Something has to be done. But again, not doubling down on the reason why the economy is so bad, which is tax cuts for the wealthy that did not create a single private sector job in the entire 10 years since they've been enacted. There are a lot of alternatives, actually, a lot of excluded alternatives. Basically, the entire package of $6 trillion over 10 years, if we just ended the Bush tax cuts, that would be $4 trillion. And then he adds almost $2 trillion of tax cuts on top of it. So that's what we're talking about here. There are a lot of excluded alternatives around tax policy. Representative Jan Schakowsky has a bill to really make the tax code more fair for millionaires and billionaires and reform the estate tax. And then tomorrow, on Wednesday, the Congressional Progressive Caucus is going to do its entire own budget blueprint. And there's also a lot of organizations outside, Demos, the Economic Policy Institute, and the Century Foundation, on our website, which is called ourfiscalsecurity.org, have an entire blueprint called Investing in America's Economy that speeds the recovery, puts Americans back to work, has fiscal discipline, and rebuilds the middle class. It can be done.
States are seeing a lot of the crises come to their door, land on the desk of governors and of city governors too. Mayors around the country are facing tremendous shortfalls. We keep hearing about it. While the federal government fights about what the federal government's fighting about, what can state officials be doing right now to change the situation on the ground?
We're actually seeing something very exciting in about a dozen states, and the most progress has been made in Oregon, actually, where right now there's a bill under consideration to use this solution from the heartland that has actually been working in North Dakota for almost 100 years, for 91 years. It's kind of like the public option in banking. basically, instead of putting all of the taxpayers' money into Wall Street banks and sending it basically to wherever Wall Street decides to invest, overseas, to corporate CEO pay and all of that, the state bank is a public system that actually keeps taxpayer money and reinvests it through community and local banks to create jobs and small business lending. So you've got in Oregon, Hawaii, Maine, New Hampshire, Washington State, all of these different people, and I'm talking about farmers, small business owners, community bankers, banding together and saying, you know what, when the recession hit, Wall Street banks that have dominated our state cut back on lending. I mean, Bank of America small business loans in Oregon dropped down to just a handful of loans over the crisis. I mean, it was really quite astonishing. Whereas in North Dakota, the State Bank of North Dakota, because it makes the money that it makes off the deposits actually goes back to the Treasury, there wasn't a shortfall in the budget, and they were able to cut taxes. And the bank actually increased lending to small businesses through community banks by 35% during the crisis. So this is a solution that can really have bipartisan support, that gives local economies more control over what happens in a recession. And we've got a bunch of papers on our website, demos.org, called Putting Maryland's Money Back to Work for Maryland, Putting Oregon's Money Work to for Oregon, that really show that there is another way, and other ways possible.
Another way is possible. Finally, individuals. We've gone from the federal to the state to the individual. A lot of people talk about moving their money from the big banks, the banks that have been, in many people's views, kind of bilking the public. Where can you move your money to and be sure that you're not channeling it back to the same hands after all?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a problem. There are credit unions, which are local member-owned credit unions, and you can go on the National Credit Union website and find if there's a local one that, you know, allows people to become members. There are small and local community banks. That said, you know, particularly when you look at abuses around credit cards and payday loans, it's not like the community banks are, you know, saints and were completely not responsible for some of the abuses that led up to the crisis. So we need to not sort of give everybody a pass, particularly in terms of small banks, you know, when they're up to $50 billion in assets and they have credit cards just like everyone else with 20% interest. So I think we need to be looking at alternative models in banking. I think the state bank is a great model. In North Dakota, it actually does retail banking and student loans and all that. So I think we need to be pushing for more publicly accountable institutions.
All right. Heather McGhee, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy GRITtv? Want more people to see it? Well, we are making our program available free to public television stations coast to coast. If you would like to see our show on your local public television station, please give them a call and ask for GRITtv with Laura Flanders. Thanks.